I just mentioned that the two parties have to be interdependent. But there are some different ways that interdependence works. One type of negotiation is called zero-sum or distributive. What that means is, for me to achieve my objective means you lose. I get the best. I get the lowest price for the car, and the salesman and the dealership loses in the sense that they lose the profit. They go down so much in order to accommodate my interest. That's why it's called zero sum, win-lose. So one party is trying to get as much that is possible from the other side. This again goes back to the power issue. Who has the power? The case of Amazon, what they're basically saying is they're going to get the biggest chunk of the profit that comes out of sales of the book. You don't like it? Okay, go someplace else. So in a situation like that, both sides are maneuvering, are trying to figure out a way of taking the maximum benefit of the relationship. They're not too concerned about what happens afterwards. What happens when the other side is really not very happy or comfortable or feels that they've been given too much. So the consequences, longer term consequences, are not under consideration in zero-sum situation. That's why if you engage in a zero-sum situation, don't expect to have a positive, mutually trusting relationship going forward. That's kind of the price you pay. Now, there is another way of negotiation or interdependence. That's usually called non-zero-sum or integrative. In a case that's integrative, that means both parties work together in order to achieve mutually satisfactory decision and agreement. So both parties benefit. So the real recommendation by most experts in negotiation is try to do integrative negotiation. Try to find common interest. Because doing that and achieving that generates a lot of positive relationship and trust. Okay, now, in any kind of negotiation, and this is really the challenge to integrative negotiation, there are two dilemmas. The first is the dilemma of honesty. How honest should I be? How much information should I share? If I share too much information with you about my interests, my objectives, my goals, then you now know too much, and now you have advantage over me. But remember what I said earlier. The best approach to negotiation is to find common interest. But in order to find common interest, you need some level of honesty to share information. If I ask you questions and you don't give me answers because you don't want to share any information, it's going to be very hard for me to understand your interest. So that's the dilemma. How honest each side should be. And the second dilemma is the dilemma of trust. Okay, you ask me a question and I answer. But are you going to trust what I told you? this really is the best example is in a car showroom. What happens is the salesman keeps giving you information. This is the greatest car, fantastic reviews, da 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 da, and we're giving you the best price. But do you trust it? Do you believe what the salesman tells you? So both sides have this dilemma of honesty and trust, which are really the two sides of the same coin. At the same time, if you want to be a successful negotiator, you have to show dual concern. What that means is you need to reflect on your own outcomes. You need to have a good sense of what is it that you want? What's your interest? What are the issues that you want to negotiate on? What's your objective? What's your target? I'll explain all of these in a minute. And in the now very famous book called Getting to Yes, the authors introduced a concept called best alternative to negotiated agreement. Everybody refers to it as BATNA. It's the acronym. What that means is, if I go to a showroom to negotiate the purchase of a car, what is my best alternative if I do not reach an agreement? What is the best price that, in my mind, is the best price to get? So, best alternative to a negotiated agreement means if I do not reach an agreement with you, what are my other options? And what is the best option among those? That's what's called BAT. So, it's very important that as a negotiator, you think about this. Objectives, goals, interests, and your BATNA. But that's not all. You also have to think about what is the other party's BATNA. What is their objectives? What is their outcomes? What are their alternatives? If in fact they cannot reach an agreement with me. Now, the reality is that's not always easy. So through question and answer, you try to get a better sense of what are their alternatives, etc. But as you can imagine, that's not very straightforward. You can ask people that question, but sometimes they may not answer your question. Sometimes they may give you the wrong information. But the key to success in negotiation is preparation. And this dual concern is part of that preparation. Before you sit down in front of somebody, you have to have a good sense of your own interests, issues, objectives, BATNAs, and you have to have some element of what is their BATNA. What's their interest? So, what I'm going to do now is to give you a list of steps that you need to take in order to prepare yourself for a negotiation. Every expert who has studied negotiation will tell you preparation is the key. What does that mean? Well, first of all, you need to define your goal. What is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you engaging in this negotiation? As I mentioned earlier, some of your goals are tangible, some are intangible, and you may even have some objectives in terms of the process of negotiation. Who should be involved? What steps should be taken as part of the negotiation? For example, I may decide that my goal is to enter the negotiation with a zero-sum mentality, win-lose. That's my goal. I'm going to extract the best value from this negotiation. I don't care about anything else. Or your objective may be, I want to build a long-term relationship, trusting relationship with my counterpart, and I'm going to follow a process that will help me get to that. How I share information, what kind of information I share, what kinds of questions I ask, all of those are driven by my objective in terms of the procedure that I'm going to follow. Now, the next part of preparation is, what are the issues relating to this goal? So let's take this case of buying a car. So the way it works in the US, now there's a lot of information available on the internet about average price for a car, the range of the price, all of that information. So price obviously is an important objective. Now, what does price mean? It's easy to say, well, the price means the price that I negotiate with the salesperson to buy the car. But that's only part of it. So the salesperson does their best to negotiate with you to reach some level, some agreement on, okay, we sell you this price for this car for $50,000. That's it. That's the price. Now he or she tells you, I need to go to my manager and get approval. Okay. Well, so they go back office and they do their thinking, whatever it is that they do. He or she comes back and says, okay, we're not totally happy about this because there's some zero-sum game to this process. Okay, but we agree. Now I need to take you to my finance person. Okay, so that sounds very reasonable. Finance. So you go to the finance person, but here's the catch. The finance person tells you, here is a menu of additional things that we'd like to sell you. Additional insurance, insurance for your tire, a whole host of other things that never came up in your discussion with the salesperson. In most cases, if the customer wasn't prepared for this, the customer ends up buying a whole bunch of things which are very, very high margin for the dealership. But if you're prepared for that, and if you understand that the price of the car is not what you negotiated with the salesperson, that's part one. Part two is what you negotiate with the finance person. If you understand that, then you include that as your discussion right off the bat, and in reaching your agreement with the salesperson. Because the salesperson doesn't want to get into that stuff because they're additional. So that way, the dealer makes a lot of good money on the margins for the additional services that you weren't really thinking about when you were negotiating the price. So what are the elements of this goal that you are trying to achieve? It's also very important for you to rank them. What's important to you? Because remember, it's a give and take. So you need to decide, okay, so what is it that I'm willing to show some flexibility on, and what is it that I'm not willing to show flexibility on? So what's the most important? And the other important thing to keep in mind is, are these issues related or independent? So let's say you want to get into a joint venture with another company. What are your objectives? You want technology? You want market access? You want regulatory approval? The regulatory approval is very important if you are doing it cross-border. So these are all issues. These are topics for which you will have goals and objectives. Some of them are related, technology and market. Some of them are unrelated, regulatory requirements. It is so important to know about the other party. And as you will see in week 8, this is doubly important and a lot harder when you're doing cross-border and cross-cultural negotiation. Define their interests. Why are they negotiating with you? What's in it for them? What are the issues? So the key message here is try to learn as much about the other side as you learn and organize about yourself. Many negotiators engage, and I've been involved in some of these big companies, start negotiations with the other side and another country. They don't really know much about the other person, the other group, the other company. That is a mistake. And we'll get to that a little more. It's really important as part of your preparation to know your BATNA. What are your other alternatives outside of this negotiation? What if you cannot reach an agreement on a joint venture with this company? What are some of your other options? Maybe you start your own business. Well, what are the costs and benefits of doing that? Again, same thing. What is the BATNA for the other side? What is it they're interested in? And what alternatives do they have? If they cannot reach an agreement with you in a joint venture, what would they do? Would they just stop? Or they have 3 other alternatives to go? You need to try to investigate, to collect information, and to understand the answers to these questions. As you know, it's not easy, but you have to have some level of information about these things. The other side of BATNA is the resistance point. The resistance point is the point you say, okay, I'm done. No more negotiation. We're out. So you have your objectives. Let's say, in the case of buying a car, based on the investigation I've done, looking at other markets, other products, price ranges available on the internet, the inventory of the same car in other dealerships, and in the same dealership that I'm negotiating. Before entering the dealership, I have a price in mind. If I cannot get the dealer to sell me the car at that price, done. I'm out. Again, it's very important to have some understanding of your resistance point because it gives you discipline. Otherwise, you're going to be at the mercy of the other side who will manipulate you, influence you, get you to keep going higher on the price or whatever it is that you're negotiating on. Again, same level of information about the other side. What's their resistance point? Obviously, there is a minimum price that the dealer is able to sell their car to you. So if you are still below that, and you keep insisting that they sell it to you at that price, they'll say, sorry, we can't do it, period. That's now. After you have some understanding of your BATNA, of your resistance point, their BATNA and their resistance point, you now set a target price for yourself. What's going to be your opening bid? In the absence of that information, you're shooting in the dark. You don't really know what you're doing. That's why you need preparation to help you come to some level of a target price. Now, this is something that is particularly important in global cross-cultural negotiations, but even in unicultural environments, it's still very important. You're sitting in front of a person who is negotiating with you. But in most cases in business, this negotiation is not an isolated situation. There are other stakeholders. There are other groups inside their corporation, inside your corporation, who have an interest in this negotiation, or who have to approve, or who have to provide feedback or input. The more you understand who else is involved and what is the broader environment like, the better your chances of a successful negotiation. So don't just assume that the only person that you need to be concerned about is the person sitting in front of you. That would be very simplistic and wrong. You need to develop a good understanding of the network and the context within which the negotiation is taking place. In cross-border situations, governments play a critical role. They're not sitting in front of you negotiating with you, but whatever you negotiate at some point has to be approved by them. So you need to understand what's going on over there. And once you do all of this, you come to framing your message. How do you present your opening bid? How do you present your starting position? What is the message you're trying to communicate to the other side? And we'll get to that in a minute. So these are the different steps that you need to take. As you can see, there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you sit in front of the other party to do the negotiation.